Does testosterone therapy increase the risk of heart attacks? What causes the cessation of your manhood? Biological functions for your metabolism and help to slow down the aging process. Things that you can't visibly see straight away. So that's why you got to change the paradigm and saying testosterone that's low is not great for my health.
Is there any evidence that there is a baseline set of testosterone?
So if the environmental toxins are damaging the testes or affecting the brain or circulating around, and maybe they're getting some testosterone, but it's blocking the receptors, your body, your cells were accustomed to having a much higher level and a different pattern. So, quick quiz. Does anyone know, true or false, does testosterone therapy increase the risk of heart attacks? What do you guys think?
Yeah.
No,
You think it does? It might. You've heard this.
it might depend on the dose.
Yeah. All right. So,
I thought you need to add resistance training to make the bone denser.
well, of course, resistance training as well, but those men in the study weren't on. They already had some form of heart disease to begin with. But what's good though about debunking the myth behind heart disease is that actually testosterone can be beneficial to the heart, and it wasn't having a negative effect on the heart.
Well, it's better to look like this than like that, you know, that square.
Well,
like,
I don't want to be misleading. Not everyone can look like that, and you can take testosterone. Yeah, but you know, if you work at it, right? Well, yeah, it's funny because guys who get the training right, eat well, but don't really make those gains pre-TRT, when they go on TRT, they said finally quick, like it just seems to come on much more easily in the muscle mass, and the body fat comes off. And that's the way it should be, like in your 20s, you know, everything's kind of primed. You should be able to.
Here's a question for you, right? Let's say, for example, the thought, when you said you don't want to be reliant on something, that's what people worry about.
Some people.
Yeah, that's the thought I actually had, or you were talking. Let's just say, for example, I've been taking it, let's say now I'm 40.
Yeah.
It's taking 20 years. I'm 60 now, 70 to 70 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting old now. They're taking these things for fucking years. And I'm now looking to go into a care home. My wife's gone, you know, I'm alone in the care home. What am I going to do? I'm like, okay, let's say I stop taking it. Now, my body doesn't now produce testosterone. It's just so used to the external testosterone.
It will eventually, but there'll be a period of not feeling great.
And then do I get my nurse in the care room to inject me or the arse, or how does it work? Like,
Well, it doesn't go in your arsehole, but it goes out the upper outer quadrant of your glutes. Yeah, but
go through it.
look,
Go in and you. It's good, bro.
you know, look, we got.
Where's the cream though? But where's the other?
So okay, you can inject it. You can inject it, and you can inject the upper outer quadrant of your glutes. You can inject it in your quads. You can inject it in the side of your glute over here with tiny small needles. You can inject it, though I don't love it because it leaves lots of lumps and bumps. But some people like to have that control injected in their abs, and that again is personal preference. Subcutaneous. I think the subcutaneous, you can do subcutaneous injections, but I find that it slows down the absorption too much. You can create lots of lumps and bumps and bruises, and if you wanted to go with your shirt off, it's not a good look. I mean, I got a warning on Facebook once because I reposted a picture from someone who sent me a picture of their injection site, and it was so inflamed, it looked like a boob. It literally looked like a female breast, and they dinged me for showing nudity on a Facebook group. That's how large it was, right? So that's not ideal location for everyone, and it's not ideal to put oil into a fatty area like that. But you can do like a shallow intramuscular injection. I find, you know, areas like on the side over here, very easy to do. Could use a tiny needle, so it's not that hard to do it. And if you had to be injected, if you're in a care home, I'm sure they would inject you. But God, 60 is quite young to be in a care home. You should set your goal a little bit higher.
I'm dependent on this thing for the rest of my life.
Yeah, but you're also dependent on feeling very shitty for the rest of your life, yeah, and having some other, and you're also, but you know what, you might not even go that long, because the data says those men with the lowest levels have a higher risk of mortality the next 5 years on average. So you might not have to worry about a care home.
If I do ever come off it, at 60, I don't give a shit if I was 60.
Yeah, but it's not about the 60. That right there is where a lot, and that's a great comment you made, because a lot of the people in the general public will say, It's about what I look like. No, this is not. And sorry, again, I should have put, I kind of gravitated towards the nice ripply muscly guy, but we all do, right? It's human nature. But in reality, most of us on TRT, I mean, this guy's got good lighting, he's dieting down. It's not about that. It's about, you know, a wellness. It's not about the things you can actually even see. It's about things that are happening internally to your body, because your body needs testosterone so for so many biological functions, for your metabolism, and help to slow down the aging process, things that you can't visibly see straight away. Yeah, mental health, the way your blood sugar works. That's why I make the joke about the endocrinologist being average or mediocre diabetes specialists, because if they're a good diabetes specialist, they would recognize the power of testosterone to help fix the diabetes, but they don't. So they get demoted in my book and many others. So that's why you got to change the paradigm and saying testosterone that's low is not great for my health, regardless if I have to keep taking it for the rest of my life. Now, 20, 30 years, will there be other treatments? Maybe will there be a genetic treatment to rejuvenate with stem cells, your testes to make it work? I don't know. But the least expensive option, easiest option, is to be able to essentially do testosterone therapy, in which you're using testosterone to fix what's not there. Make sense? Hopefully that do a bit reassured. But yeah, that's a really, really good question.
Quick question about that. Is there any evidence, or could you say that while a young male is growing up to a certain point past puberty, I thought he was around about 20 or something, is there any evidence that there is a baseline set of testosterone that you think that these environmental factors, the sedentary lifestyle, is actually having an effect on their future production of testosterone? So if you're not actually activating something in the body by behaving a certain way, obviously tramping it down, so shitty food and stuff, does that set a very low baseline? Is it something that we know?
Well, if there's damage to the testes, because testes are your factory for testosterone, so if the environmental toxins are damaging the testes or affecting the brain, or circulating around, and maybe they're getting some testosterone, but it's blocking the receptors. So now they're almost like an androgen insensitivity syndrome. So whilst there is circulating testosterone, one, it might be lower than it should, because the environmental, you know, estrogens are basically sending a false signal to the brain to slow down the whole mechanism of LH to the testes, and then, you know, it just sets a vicious cycle. So yeah, is there a set number? Well, that number could be changed, right? But if they don't get the testosterone to all their cells at a young enough age, one, they're not going to fully develop in puberty. You know, two, it might negatively affect the brain. Three, you know, they're not going to have the same, you know, benefits of reaching adulthood without having, you know, adequate testosterone as a younger person. Now, some people go through delayed puberty, you know, and we don't treat teenagers or anyone less than adult, like 18, and even that, you know, we like to push a little to a little bit older. But for these young people, they contacted us, and they're desperate because they don't get help from the NHS. We had one chap that was because during COVID, the NHS started him on androgens, you know, like 15, 16, and then just stopped. And didn't give him any more. He was supposed to get 2 rounds, nothing. So it's a shame. It's really awful. It's a really terrible treatment on the part of the NHS. But in general, you want to set people up for the right stages in life. And if the younger generation, because of all these other bits, aren't getting their testosterone in an adequate amount, what's going to happen to our future? Because that's a bit scary.
Just as a follow-up question so that I understand it. When are we done growing down there? You know, at what age is that set that you
What do you start taking?
when does it, like, in terms of being an adult man, everything being fully functional and that's how it's set, when does that part stop? Because I understand that we become adults at, when there does that kind of stop typically?
So there was a good study about what causes the cessation of your manhood, yeah? That's what you're asking? And there's certain chemical signals, TGF-beta1, which can cause fibrosis. That may, it's not fully agreed, that may, so the funny thing is we make androgens, right? We make androgens as a mini puberty 6 months after we're born. Within 6 months after, you get this spike that's nearly as high as your adolescent level of testosterone. And it drops back down to very low levels. But even children have some low levels of testosterone. I think even they can get erections. Then, you know, puberty hits and you get the sudden surge and the signaling from the brain. They think something called kisspeptin sits above, and you may have heard of this peptide, kisspeptin. I don't know if you guys have heard of heard of this? I think Imperial College was doing a study on kisspeptin, a version of it, and essentially that sits high on the food chain. And like kisspeptin tells you other gonadotropins, LH and FSH, no, GnRH, gonadotropin releasing hormone to release, which then causes LH and FSH to signal your testes, and they start growing and maturing. The LH making your testosterone, FSH helping the sperm to develop. And then there's a feedback loop for both inhibin, I think A and B, and there's and the estradiol that your testosterone aromatizes into, then tells the brain, hey, we're going to have testosterone, and the cycle slows down or speeds up depending on how it senses the estradiol. You know,
I asked you a little the last time, but could you maybe elaborate a little bit about going on and then maybe dropping out of TRT?
Oh yeah.
stopping and starting,
You started for a while, then you stop.
And then you regret
like cycling it. Yeah, so
even just getting out, you know, what's the
Yeah,
experience?
say what for 5 years straight, and then I was just like, I just don't do it, and then I just stop.
yeah, well, look, it's they used to say you should taper it, but that's kind of pointless because you're just delaying the inevitable. So a better approach that I've seen, if you were thinking you wanted to stop it, let's say you just did testosterone treatment during that course of therapy, the best option is to try to get the testes back online. But if you just put HCG in on its own, it's going to take a while to get to the levels that you had. So sometimes patients will be on testosterone and HCG to get the testes at least working, or sometimes they'll be on it from the beginning of treatment to get the testes working. So that if you do stop the exogenous testosterone, you still have the exogenous signal, the proxy for your LH and FSH, but that signal has been keeping what I call the factory open and running, at least on a lower capacity, right, whilst you're on the testosterone treatment. So then when you finally stop, there is still a day of reckoning. There's still a day where then the estradiol has to drop low enough, the testosterone has to drop low enough, so the brain to finally say, we got to start ramping up the orders, you know, from the head office to get the factory going on again, right? So that has to occur. And then eventually it'll start coming back online again. But your body, your cells were accustomed to having a much higher level and a different pattern, right? Your normal variation, you get higher testosterone levels normally in the morning, though after the age of 40, it's not as much of a difference between the morning and the evening level. But there's a certain symphony of things that are happening between the brain and the body and how all this is working. And you got used to that being on exogenous testosterone. And you probably overall, if you were to measure the area under the curve, the volume of all the testosterone you were getting on the external treatment, exogenous treatment versus what your own body would be making, you're probably getting a lot larger area than you would with just natural production. So you're going to be spoiled. You're going to like those levels. Your body's going to function better with those levels. And so there's going to be an adjustment going back to being the old Jew. So the question is why? Why would you want to do that if it's enhancing your quality of life of your body going forward? So I've been on treatment since I was at 22 years old. I'm now 51. So I've been on it, and I never went without my treatment. Well, the most I've been is probably about 25 days. I've been 30 days. It's starting to feel a slowdown, but it wasn't awful. I think the benefit for me though, and it couldn't work out because they kept testing my testosterone levels, and they're kind of hanging about for a while. So I started at about like 39 nanomoles per liter, 40. Like, oh, it's so high, it's so high. My brother is naturally about 39 nanomoles per liter. So how could that be that high? If you were to look at my age, versus, other peers of mine are around 50 or older may have lower levels when you look at the aggregate of people who got blood tests. But overall, 39, 40 is not a dangerous level. So the time I was on, HCG, keeping the testes going, along with my exogenous testosterone. But when we removed HCG and the testosterone, they seemed quite buoyant. It took a very long time for them to come down. It took nearly about 20 to 23 days before they got down to around 12 nanomoles per liter. And then I was like, okay, I need to do an injection now. So it was okay. It wasn't the end of the world. And sometimes for some patients, there may be just a few, a week or two break. Sometimes it may help reset things. Sometimes not reset to go back on their own, but just it may help them feel, maybe lower the estradiol over time, or maybe help lower hematocrit or hemoglobin. Sometimes that happens as well. If it goes too high, you either stop the treatment for a while, a couple weeks, and lower the dose when you restart.
Just someone brought up like your test, and also you should get blood.
Yeah, so that has to do with what they call the thickening of the blood. So in the studies where they looked at, so there's never been any study that says men on testosterone treatment are at higher risk of whether stroke or any sort of issue with clotting of the blood, okay, with testosterone treatment. We know that people who have thickening of the blood, they call that polycythemia vera, is different to erythrocytosis secondary to androgen therapy. It's kind of a benefit when many men who are traditionally hypogonadal go on testosterone treatment, they have really low, they're almost anemic. And so it's really a good thing that testosterone raises that so they're no longer anemic. So that's a benefit. But men who are kind of borderline or young or just tend to have higher levels of hematocrit and hemoglobin, they can produce quite high levels sometimes. It also depends on how the treatment is. So the testosterone gels, which are the weaker ones, tend not to increase it as much, but it depends on the individual. Creams in general tend not to increase it as much, but it still can. Again, dose dependent. I think the predictor is how high your free testosterone level is on trough. That means the time at the lowest point, right before your next application or injection or dose that you take away, that's your trough. And so the higher the free testosterone is at trough, the more likely you will be to have a higher hematocrit and hemoglobin in many cases. But there can be other...
Skin gets like a little more red when you work out and stuff.
Yeah, but it's more like out of the shower, you get dry, itchy skin, and there's some other factors. But donating blood in general is okay. I mean, you can give blood if you're going to be just to donate to people. I think once every 3+ months or so is fine. And if you go consistently, I think they give you a free meal at the end of the year, depending on the blood taking society, right? Well, no, they'll give you like a reward meal or some gift certificate.
I'm curious if that's like part of a regimen.
I haven't given blood, and a real simple way is you just lower the dose, or you go small, more frequent dosing, and that helps you not need to give blood. But giving blood isn't bad because there are some studies to remove the forever chemicals. Donating blood helps get them out of the system, and there may be some other benefits for the turnover of blood like that. But there are, again, in the TRT community, there's a whole other group that says, no, never give blood, you don't need to do this. I think what they're saying is that there has been too much fear and panic around this elevation in hematocrit and hemoglobin being on TRT. And I get their point, because people who live in really high altitude, they're not giving blood, and they're not dying of heart attacks and strokes because of a thickening of the blood. So it is, like I said originally, quite a theoretical thing when it comes to men on TRT, and it's usually only those that had the kidney disease that had a problem. I mean, look, the FDA, like I said earlier, you do need to check your blood pressure. That's huge. Some men will have extra edema or water retention, depending on, usually injections will cause that more. But then as we also get to middle age and beyond, it's really important to keep that under control, because high blood pressure is a silent killer. You don't even know you have it. And so getting that managed, and sometimes, diet and exercise gets you so far, maybe a little bit of tadalafil, this just doesn't work good for down there, but it helps the blood vessels, it dilates them, improves nitric oxygen or nitric oxide. Probably to a certain degree, your low carb diet is good. But if you do need to have blood pressure medications, there are the nasty ones that are like the calcium channel blockers that make your prolactin elevate and kill your libido. Or there are some that are actually, some of them are even exercise mimetics, and those are the ARBs, the angiotensin receptor blockers, which keep your body from, it acts like an extra help for exercise that helps you burn fat a little bit, and it also keeps your blood pressure down, and there really aren't any side effects unless you take too much, and then you get orthostatic hypotension. That's when you get up very quickly and you're a bit dizzy. So anyway, that's important, the blood pressure too, to keep it in check.
Do you have any help for too much testosterone?
Too much? We did a video on that, didn't we, Paul Kit? We made a video, what happens if I take too much? What happens? And I think there was...
Too much natural.
I think there was one study, it's even with the packaged leaflet, someone, they took way, they overdosed on it, and I think it's like 1 or 2 cases of someone dying.
So, if someone has low testosterone, yes, what I'm hearing is that the reason why by using like, when we get on it, you're on it for why, right? That's what kind of people are saying, is because if you have low testosterone and then you take exogenous testosterone in some form, that's gonna just boost you up. It doesn't actually harm anything permanently. It's just if you go off it, you go back to your...
You go back to your testosterone, but you may not be happy living with that level after living up here. It's like...
You haven't made yourself, like your low testosterone is not going to get lower.
Yeah.
It's just, it was low to start with. you're happier when it was hot.
It's like this. If you got used to flying first class all the time, and all of a sudden you go back to economy without any extra racket, you know, you could do it. You could do it, but would you want to? All right, I'm just using that it came to my head. I thought that might be a good enough. Right.
Second question.
Yeah.
Are the side effects different by delivery modality?
It can be, yeah. So, I mean, I think, even the gels are on the package leaflet, might cause skin irritation because of the alcohol, right? So you wouldn't want to rub that on your scrotum. I mean, the gels that we have use, I think, safer non-BPA type of chemicals to get in. Some of them are like a form of vitamin E and things that help the absorption through the skin. Injections, some of the side effects people have with certain injections, like I think testosterone tends to burn and sting the most for some people, but not everyone, and that's because there's a high concentration of preservative. But out there on the internet world, people think it has to do with the testosterone propionate, but I can say with certainty that's not it, because I use a testosterone propionate product daily. No burning and sting, or PIP as they call it, after the injection. So that's called post-injection pain, where you can just really feel like you've bruised or hit down there. So it depends on the modality, yeah.
You've been injecting all the time.
Every day for the past year, testosterone propionate, about 1 ml.
Every day.
Yeah.
So you don't do it like every week.
But you can do it every week, you can do it every 3 days, you can do it every 4 days, you can do it every 5 days, every 6 days. That's just what I settled on. Sometimes we're doing the smaller, more frequent doses. It kind of offsets needing, it matches more closely with the body's diurnal rhythm, and it's just, you know you're doing it every day. But for some people, it's a real pain. If I skipped a day,
You haven't considered using one of the creams for yourself?
a daily, I had in the past, I used it for a long time. I just did. I just had a cream to me. Now I'm really high now, but not high, but I'm really levels are.
I would assume, right? I have stabbed myself with a needle.
Yeah.
Like The Rock, if I move through, you gotta inject yourself in the heart, But for some people, the creams might be more approachable, right? If the thought of giving yourself a shot. Is it just the efficacy that's the difference? I mean, obviously,
They're both.
direct to me.
I have studies from another doctor, from our own clinic. You get some fantastic levels on the cream. But for some patients, they work for a while, some, not everyone, and then we could do a blood test and then it's off. That could be because of timing. It could be consistently applying it to the same area, maybe. But many patients have been on for years and years and years of cream, no issue. Also, the cream could vary. I mean, we have really good high quality control at our pharmacy, but the creams can vary based on how they're mixed and the formulation. And we had our earlier formulations that were just a little bit more gritty, and then we've kind of reformulated to get rid of the grit. You learn things. It's not just a matter of following a recipe, because you're kind of out there. But it's just getting the art down to be able to know how many times to spin it. We have a special device that spins the creams at really high speeds, one way, one the other, and then we do that several times, and there's a whole science behind it. And there's a certain way that you have to add, because the testosterone itself is a very fluffy powder, goes everywhere, and then you have to have another agent that's called a ethoxyglycol that it kind of liquefies it, and then you put it with the base of the cream, and then you spin it in a big jar, and then it gets dispensed into these things. So that's, again, but the formulation is usually spot on every time. But if you went to a different compounding pharmacy, it might be slightly different, or they might use a different base. Other treatment modalities like injections, sometimes people like those because they're in. Some people are worried about spreading a transference to a partner, or the pet. Though I had one guy said, well, we were talking about the scrotal cream, and they said, what if my pet licks it? I'm like, it's on your scrotum. It's like, I hope your pet's not going down there. But if that's what you're into. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's pet, yeah.
No, you aren't even had.
Oh, you thought, his partner, yeah. Yeah, maybe. Well, but testosterone, if you take it in the mouth like that, it would not really, even though with this oral tablets, it would just, your stomach acid would kill it. You probably get very minimal absorption. And women make testosterone as well. So there's also some undue fear that, my partner's going to grow a moustache. But I think you can't control for how much they're going to actually absorb, especially sitting in the skin. Where the creams are nice, because look, I put in a small area, unlikely, unless I'm holding someone for a long time and skin-to-skin contact, unlikely to cause an issue. Or if you have it on your scrotum, I would joke and say, unless you're like going balls deep, taking that literally, kind of thumbing them in, you're probably not going to have an issue, a transference. So,
just a good question on life insurance. Obviously, if I've got any medical changes, if I'm on any medication, if I'm making any changes, obviously in my lifestyle, I need to let my policy insurance holder know. And if I phone them up myself, touching CRT now, but if anything happens to me, God forbid, 10 years into this.
Right, and then if you don't disclose it, look, I've had some patients that disclosed it, some patients that didn't disclose it, and it's quite normal now, and it's not when a death sentence. It doesn't mean you have a terrible medical condition. It's just this is something that you need to enhance your quality of life. And I don't think there's any penalty by being on testosterone replacement or testosterone therapy, as we call it now. But if you have low testosterone, you're at higher risk of early death anyway. So, maybe they will bump it up because you're gonna be living longer. I don't know.
What is like the standard dose that's what you can consider optimal? Is that across the board would be the same, right?
But everyone's different how they absorb it. We've got people in all different doses. So I would say when we've done an audit of our clinical records, then some of the most common doses are anywhere from 100 milligrams to 125 milligrams of an injectable testosterone every 4 to 6 days, usually every 4 to 5 days. And actually, I would say every 5 days seems to be the sweet spot between twice a week and once a week. Not quite twice, but not quite once a week. Yeah, about 100 to 125 milligrams, depending. So,
like half of a cc?
So in the UK, Testosterone is a licensed product, where in the USA it's considered like an underground thing because it's not available. There's never been FDA approved Testosterone. It has a blend of 4 different testosterone esters. And the esters are what the fatty acids that slow down its release, almost like the MCT oil, in fact. But it's fatty acid chain. Anyway, the blend, so if I say 125 milligrams of testosterone, it's not actually 125 milligrams of testosterone that you'll receive, because the weight of the ester being attached to the testosterone, if you had to calculate the testosterone, you'd have less. So you probably have 100 milligrams of testosterone every 4, 5, 6 days, depending.
Is that like
That would be more
one whole tube? Like
on the ampule, that would be half of an ampule. And ampules are what we have here in Europe that you crack open. In the US, if you're doing 200 milligrams per mil, you would probably do half a mil, give you about 100 milligrams.
every 5 days.
Every 5 days, yeah. Yeah, so do
One of those hours.
yeah. But you could do every 7 days. Some guys choose every 7 days. Look, there's a fear that your level's going to go too low too quickly, because if you've been deficient for too long, you're like, no, I got to always have it in. But once your androgen receptors are saturated, if you will, they're not going to just unsaturate the minute you miss that injection, and you're still going to have some beneficial things happening. Like me, I didn't really notice anything until, maybe day 25, 26. And I was still going on Pornhub, so it wasn't a problem.
Easier. It's like every Sunday. 5 days is every. So is it?
Yeah, so some people calculate those. They say, I say, what dose are you doing this? I'm doing 100 milligrams a week. Okay, but then you have to ask, are you doing it once a week? Are you doing twice a week? Because I like the language of saying, how much are you doing per dose and how many doses are you doing per week? That's better than saying, some people just like to think in you're right, weekly terms. And I like to think dosing terms. What are you doing for that particular dose and how often are you doing that dose?
Now, let's say you start a new patient out and you're doing your follow-up, a new patient, and what could you see that would make you say, okay, wait a minute, something is going on the side?
Usually the only recommendation for stopping would be, one of the most common ones would be a patient who has elevated hematocrit over about 54, 55. And as if it starts approaching that on the follow-up tests, then the first step would be to usually dial them down. Sometimes the doctor will prescribe a low-dose aspirin, and the doctor will usually ask that they give blood a few times or start doing it consistently. So a combination of all those would be a good option. If there were any issue, obviously if you have, I think it's like the worst form of heart failure, then one, it would be contraindicated. So you wouldn't want to, because what happens is you may get some water retention and the heart can't really pump enough blood around. But that would you know, we would know that before you came to us if you had that. Sometimes, even though I said it with the saturation model, you know, low testosterone is linked with prostate cancer, but if we discovered someone had active prostate cancer, more than likely they would be then taken over by their urologist and follow that program that the urologist wants them to follow, which would usually include stopping testosterone for a bit. And then once the prostate cancer is sorted, you know, there is a time when it looks like it's all clear, they can resume testosterone treatment. So, and there's even something called BAT therapy, which is, I think, like bilateral therapy or bilateral androgen therapy, which means they go through parts of restricting the androgens, get really low, non-existent, followed by high doses of testosterone to kill the prostate cancer. But that's quite new. It came out in 2017. You don't hear a lot about it, but you know, I mean, other things. What else would you stop? I mean, if you're having so severe side effects, etc. But usually you can adjust the dose rather than just stopping it, you know, or try different treatment.
What is the side effect that you would say like is the most? I know everybody's gonna be different, but like the most scary for people when they think about it.
Some of them is really bad acne. If they had acne as a young adult, if it gets really bad, some people really would stop because of that. It's probably the biggest. But everyone's
Hair loss, like skin related.
Yeah, some men just kind of crack on and they're like, fuck it, I feel great. I don't care about the hair loss, and you move forward. Other men, if they had experienced some men will experience, not always, a slight increase in anxiety. It does normalize, and many of the men that have stuck with it got better, but the ones that panicked and stopped, then they don't see it through. So that like
anxiety and panic and stop. That's how you're on.
They go, oh, you'll stop it, and then don't do it. So, you know, it really depends on the individual. I mean, there's many times men will stop because that they had higher expectations. They're saying, I don't feel anything, and yet, but I lost all this weight, I put on all this muscle mass, but I don't feel anything. And they're expecting it to be like a bump of coke or something. And I think part of it is when they first started the treatment, you do get a rise in dopamine. But many of the I don't feel anything guys had previously been on antidepressants, particularly the serotonin kind, which is dulls all senses. And even though they may not have been on it for 5 or 10 years, something's changed in the brain where literally, like I said earlier, they don't get the wow effect. They don't feel the benefit that they think they're going to feel. And so that's one of the reasons why they stop. Their expectations are misaligned and they have that issue to deal with. So, all right. All right, hope you guys enjoyed it. Yeah.
Just interested, the testosterone itself, where is it derived from? Is it the same as...
Other exogenous. So I think initially, like all the hormones, like cortisol as well, came from a yam, like an old sweet potato, and they extracted it from a plant and synthetically created the testosterone. But in order to make it more stable, they had to put a fatty acid ester chemically synthesized together so that it wouldn't just go through everywhere. I mean, the cream is completely unesterified. There's no fatty acid with the cream other than the components that allow it to absorb through your body. But yeah, it comes from, I think, like a wild Mexican yam. I think Dioscorea is...
Is that just because the chemical compound that they happen to be able to extract?
Yeah, it was a steroid. Yeah, and I think cortisol was also extracted from the yam. So cortisol, because you know all the... And it all comes from like a form of cholesterol, right? So and many of the hormones, they put them through chemical reactions to get the next bit. So, I mean, DHEA could be another step on the path, but DHEA I think converts to androstenedione and then converts to testosterone. But then in men, you take DHEA, you'll tend to get more estradiol or estrogen type out, and women that do DHEA will tend to get more androgens. So sometimes women who are on HRT don't always need to go on testosterone. You can give them DHEA.
So is it still from yams?
DHEA or? Yeah, I think so. I think it's, well, I don't know if it's exactly the squeezing out the yams, but I don't know. I'd ask the people that supply our API. I know historically it was discovered through yams. Yeah. So with my testes, you know, my testes are all full of varicocele, and that's good. But yeah, it's interesting that the whole how my life got all intertwined with testosterone. It's kind of, but I enjoy it, and it's fun helping people and seeing. I mean, we do other hormones as well, but I thought, you know, testosterone is quite popular. Yeah, you know, and it brings in the views.
Not going to do it.
What?
Eating more yams is not.
No, probably not. or even if you take some of the precursor ones, or the pro hormones. The pro hormones are really big in the mid noughties, early noughties. People take these pro hormones, but they end up being somewhat liver toxic, and yeah, you might get some of the increase in synthetic steroids, but it's you want bioidentical testosterone, and your body makes it, and exogenous testosterone is the easiest route to getting there, at least for now. So I mean, I can go on and on, but there's loads, but I think that's it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I enjoyed presenting. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. So, if you found this video helpful, hit the like button and subscribe for more content on hormones and men and women's health. And until next time, take control of your body and your health.